This is not just my favorite speaker for classic Marshall tone, this actually might be my favorite speaker altogether. Hey everyone, I'm Jack Fossett, and welcome to this review of the Celestion G12H Creamback speaker. Now this is a 75 watt speaker. These particular two are 8 ohms, and they have 75 hertz bass resonance. These are unequivocally my favorite speakers for classic Marshall tone. And I want to unpack that a little bit, because I'll bet a lot of you, when you saw the title of this video, I bet a lot of you expected Celestion, but you might not have expected this speaker. And I'm going to tell you why and some of the things that contribute to it. The reason that these are my favorite, first and foremost, is because they give a full warm tone at low volumes. Now, if you look at the history of Marshall amps, they're synonymous with loud. And that's part of their charm. That's part of the amazing history of Marshall, is the just obscene levels of volume that cranked out amazing tone, and the power that was associated with that, with the birth of rock and roll. The issue is that nowadays everything is so controlled, so quantified, so kind of neatly placed in boxes and things, that the reality is that unless you're in a massive touring band on huge festival stages, you can't play classic Marshall amps at the level that you need to get those tones. This is partially why you see Marshall themselves coming out with like lower wattage versions. They have the whole studio series, right? You can get, the idea is you can get plexi tone at 20 watts instead of 100 watts, which is just completely insane by modern standards. It's somewhat sad to think that if there were a modern Jimi Hendrix or Eric Clapton in Cream, they couldn't get away with those tones anymore because they'd just be too loud, at least in the clubs that they would have played in the early days that really established their legacy. And the second side to that is that modern Marshall amps tend to be somewhat different than classic Marshall amps. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think Marshall is making very high quality amplifiers. But for instance, the amp that you're hearing now, the Marshall JVM, is designed to get you levels of gain at any volume. However, the speakers don't always line up with that, and in fact, some of the classic speakers associated with Marshall tone don't really get their sound unless they're cranked to high volumes. The Creamback sounds, again, warm and full at pretty much any volume, and what you're listening to today is, I wouldn't say it's bedroom volume, but it's probably shy of rehearsal volume. I mean, even if I'm in a rehearsal studio with the band, I'd have it cranked up a bit louder than this. So it's definitely shy of gig volume, a little bit shy of rehearsal volume, and I think you'll agree, at least I think, the tones sound full and rich. When you're going for the classic Marshall tone, and I'm talking bluesbreaker, plexi, those sorts of tones, they have a tendency to sound brittle at lower volumes with many of the classic speakers. Even speakers that are like, beyond reproach, speakers that are wonderful, that have cemented their place in rock history. They just have too much of this brittle top end that you can have a hard time taming. And when you try to tame them, you have to do certain things. You have to play with the EQs in ways that you don't want. You might have to use your tone knob on your guitar more than you might like. The Creambacks give me the ability to get more range on my guitar's controls and on the amplifier's controls and still sound really good. Now, this is not a speaker shootout. You could do an endless speaker shootout over what's the best, and that's why I didn't say the best, and also obviously best is it's extremely subjective to everyone's taste and what they're going for. I am going for a full-bodied classic Marshall tone. I play clean with the Marshall quite a bit. It has a beautiful clean tone, all the way up to pretty raucous drive, whether with fuzz pedals or, even going for like a late 70s heavy crunch. But these speakers really cover that whole range of genres. So you've just heard it on a higher gain setting with a Gibson Les Paul. Now we're going to play 3 more settings, both with the Fender Stratocaster and with the Les Paul. I'm going to give you kind of an edge of breakup tone with the Stratocaster, somewhat reminiscent of a Hendrix kind of sound. Also a great classic rock rhythm crunch. And then lastly going to play it sparkling clean. And again, these are all about the same volume, and I think you'll hear that they all sound pretty full. There's no brittle top end. It's really delivering a nice tone at a very reasonable volume. This amp, I've played this amp on big outdoor stages. I've played it in some big theaters before, and in any of those, you're going through the PA, and they don't want to blow people's heads off in the first row, and so you don't have it up that loud. This is a 100-watt amplifier. This could just absolutely own the world if you wanted it to. But you can't, because that's just the world that we live in, and you might say, well, that's not rock and roll to not play that loud, but it's the reality that many of us live in. You can only play your amps so loud. So how do you get them to sound good? For me, these speakers are a big part of it. Now, I do want to mention this is a sponsored review, and I want to say thank you to Celestion for sending these. However, this entire thing was my idea. This wasn't them saying hey, tell everyone that these speakers are good at low volumes. This was me having some experience with various Creamback models and finding that it's my favorite speaker in probably most applications. Whether it be in a Supro, a Henry amp, or a Fender, various versions of the Creamback have just absolutely delivered pure tone in ways that I absolutely love. So I really wanted to get some Creambacks from my Marshall, and Celestion were kind enough to collaborate on this video with me. So that's the story there. Now, if you're interested in this speaker, you will find a link below. That's an affiliate link where you can buy it. If you buy through that link, if you buy anything through that link, that supports my channel at no additional cost to you. You will also find below there are links to my PayPal and Venmo. If you send me a tip of $7 or more, I'm going to give you access to a website that has all kinds of music downloads, including jam tracks, and that will be good forever. So anything that I upload in the future, whether it be an original song or a jam track, you will always have access to that website where you can get it. So stick around for some more tone from the Celestion Creamback. Let us know, do you agree with me on this being one of the best for classic Marshall tone? Which is your go-to? Is this one that you might not necessarily have considered? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of fans, I imagine, of the Greenback. There's going to be a lot of fans of the Vintage 30. Or let us know what else you like to use. I'm Jack Fossett. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the video.